I sat in the courtroom watching my soon-to-be ex-wife Jessica, smiling confidently across the aisle. The luxury apartment we had shared for 5 years with its panoramic city views and marble finishes was now the focal point of our bitter divorce. Her attorney was adamantly arguing that she deserved the apartment as part of the settlement. Little did Jessica know I had been keeping a simple truth from her throughout our entire marriage. Trước khi bắt đầu câu chuyện, hãy cho tôi biết bạn đang xem từ đâu và nhấn subscribe để không bỏ lỡ những câu chuyện đời thực về những bài học đắt giá trong tình yêu và hôn nhân. At 32 years old, I had built a respectable career in finance. While I was doing well, I always remained private about my actual financial situation. I preferred living comfortably, but wisely, something that would become significant later. I first met Jessica at an upscale charity gala in Manhattan. She was 28, stunningly beautiful, and worked as a fashion model for several high-end brands. The moment I saw her across the crowded ballroom, something clicked. She was wearing a sleek red dress that contrasted perfectly with her blonde hair and blue eyes. When our gazes met, I felt an immediate connection that compelled me to approach her. I have never believed in love at first sight, until tonight I told her, offering my hand. "I am Amos." She smiled, a dazzling expression that made my heart race. "Jessica, and that is quite a line. But I will give you points for confidence." Our chemistry was undeniable. We spent the entire evening talking in a quiet corner of the venue, ignoring the auction and performances. By the end of the night, I knew I wanted to see her again. Our courtship was something out of a romance novel. I took her to dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, where we shared intimate conversations over candlelight. We went sailing on the Hudson River during sunset, the city skyline, creating the perfect backdrop as we sipped champagne. Each date revealed more layers to Jessica, and I found myself falling deeper in love with her charm, her ambition, and her zest for life. "You have an amazing lifestyle," she commented one evening as we enjoyed dessert at a rooftop restaurant overlooking Central Park. "Most men in finance talk big but live small. You actually walk the walk." I smiled, flattered but slightly uncomfortable with her focus on material aspects. "I believe in enjoying life, but wisely," I replied, a philosophy I truly lived by. After 6 months of dating, our relationship had intensified to the point where spending nights apart became difficult. When Jessica suggested moving in together, it seemed like the natural next step. "My apartment has more space," I offered, and she eagerly agreed. The first time Jessica entered my rented luxury apartment, her eyes widened with appreciation. The floor-to-ceiling windows, the designer furniture, the state-of-the-art kitchen, all aligned with the image she had of me. She never asked about ownership, and I never thought to clarify. It simply never came up in conversation. Our happiness reached its peak during our trip to Paris for our first anniversary. Under the twinkling lights of the Eiffel Tower, I got down on one knee and presented her with a diamond ring. "Jessica, you have brought light and joy into my life in ways I never thought possible. Will you marry me?" Tears glistened in her eyes as she nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, Amos. 1,000 times. Yes." The engagement ring cost more than I would typically spend on a single item, but seeing her joy made it worthwhile. Jessica immediately took pictures for her social media, where she documented our lavish dates and travels for her growing follower count. We planned our wedding over the next 6 months, and it quickly became apparent that Jessica had grand visions. She insisted on hosting 300 guests at one of New York's most prestigious 5-star hotels. The flowers alone cost what some people spend on their entire ceremony, but I wanted to make her happy. On our wedding day, watching Jessica walk down the aisle in her custom designer gown, I felt like the luckiest man alive. Her beauty was breathtaking, but it was the promise of our future together that truly moved me. We exchanged vows under an arch of white roses and danced until sunrise, surrounded by friends and family who celebrated our union. "This is just the beginning of our perfect life together," Jessica whispered, as we swayed to our first dance song. I believed her, with all my heart. Our rented apartment became the setting for our married life. The 3-bedroom penthouse featured an open-concept living area, with Italian marble countertops and custom cabinetry. The main bedroom suite included a walk-in closet and a bathroom, with a soaking tub positioned by a window, offering spectacular city views. The wraparound balcony became our favorite spot for morning coffee and evening cocktails. Jessica took pride in hosting dinner parties for her model friends and social circle. She would spend days selecting the perfect tableware and floral arrangements. "Everyone is so impressed with our place," she would tell me after each gathering. Stacy could not stop asking how we managed to buy in this building at our age. I noticed she never corrected their assumptions about ownership, but I did not think much of it. Why would I? We were happy, and the technical details of our housing arrangement seemed inconsequential. I had always preferred renting high-end properties rather than purchasing them. It gave me flexibility and freedom from the responsibilities of ownership. The luxury apartment cost a significant amount in monthly rent, but it was worth it for the amenities and location. Jessica never asked about mortgage payments or property taxes, and the topic of ownership simply never arose. Our evenings often ended with intimate conversations about our dreams. Jessica talked about starting a lifestyle brand, while I shared my goals for advancing in my firm. We discussed having children, imagining how we would convert the home office into a nursery. These quiet moments of connection and shared aspirations were what I treasured most about our marriage. "I love our life," Amos Jessica would say, as we watched the sunset from our balcony, her head resting on my shoulder. "Everything is perfect." For a while it truly was. After our first wedding anniversary, I began noticing subtle changes in Jessica. Her satisfaction with our lifestyle, once abundant, started showing cracks. "The Richardsons just bought a summer house in the Hamptons," she mentioned casually one evening, as she scrolled through her phone. "We should consider doing the same. It would be perfect for weekend getaways." "That is a significant investment," I replied cautiously. "I am not sure the timing is right." Jessica looked up, a flash of disappointment crossing her face. "But you make good money. What are we saving for, if not to enjoy life now?" These conversations became more frequent. Jessica would compare our lifestyle to those of her increasingly wealthy friends, pointing out the gaps between what we had and what she felt we should have. "Darling, your job at the firm is fine, but have you considered moving to a hedge fund? Thomas switched last year and doubled his income," she suggested during dinner one night. "I appreciate the stability of my current position," I explained. "The hedge fund world is high risk, high reward. I prefer consistency." Jessica sighed, clearly unsatisfied with my response. "Sometimes I think you lack ambition." Those words stung more than she knew. Gradually, Jessica spent less time at home and more with her affluent social circle. Shopping trips became longer, dinner dates with her friends more frequent. When she was home, she was often distracted, scrolling through social media feeds, showcasing luxury vacations and designer purchases. "Do you still love me?" I asked one night after she had barely spoken during our dinner. "Of course I do," she answered quickly, not looking up from her phone. "Why would you ask that?" "Because sometimes it feels like you love the idea of who you want me to be, more than who I actually am." She finally met my gaze, her expression softening momentarily. "I just want us to live our best life, Amos." Is that so wrong? I wanted to believe her, but a growing unease had taken root in my heart. The first major red flag appeared when our credit card statement arrived with a $30,000 balance for a single month. Flipping through the pages, I found charges from luxury boutiques, high-end department stores, and exclusive spas. "Jessica, we need to talk about this," I said, showing her the statement. She glanced at it briefly. It was Fashion Week. I needed to make the right impression. "That is more than I bring home in a month after taxes." "Maybe you should ask for a raise then," she replied dismissively. A week later, a delivery arrived at our apartment. Jessica excitedly unwrapped a Hermes Birkin bag in a vibrant coral shade, the price tag of $50,000 still attached. "You spent $50,000 on a purse without discussing it?" I asked, trying to remain calm. "It is an investment piece," she defended. "They appreciate in value. Besides, everyone in my circle has at least one." The financial strain intensified when I discovered Jessica had opened separate credit cards in her name, and accumulated $75,000 in debt. She had been hiding bills and intercepting mail to conceal her spending habits. "This cannot continue," I told her firmly, during what became our first major argument. "We need to create a budget and stick to it." "You are so cheap," she accused, tears welling in her eyes. "We live in a luxury apartment in Manhattan, but you freak out over a few shopping trips. You are not the man I thought you were, and you are not the woman I married," I retorted, immediately regretting the harshness of my words. In an attempt to save our rapidly deteriorating relationship, I suggested marriage counseling. Jessica reluctantly agreed, but after 3 sessions, she refused to return. "That therapist is clearly on your side," she complained. "She keeps talking about fiscal responsibility, when our problem is your unwillingness to live up to our social position." For our 2nd anniversary, I planned an expensive trip to Bali, staying in a private villa with personal staff. I hoped the romantic setting would help us reconnect and remember what brought us together. For a brief moment it seemed to work. Jessica was attentive and affectionate, reminiscing about our early dates and making plans for the future. But once we returned home, the old patterns quickly reemerged. Jessica only seemed truly engaged when gifts were involved. The emotional distance between us grew wider with each passing day, and I began to wonder if our marriage could survive. I tried suggesting activities we used to enjoy together: cooking classes, museum visits, weekend hiking trips. Jessica would either decline or participate, half-heartedly checking her phone constantly and finding reasons to cut our time short. "I do not understand what happened to us," I said one evening, as we sat on opposite ends of the sofa, both absorbed in our separate devices, rather than talking to each other. "Nothing happened," she replied without looking up. "People evolve. Maybe we are just growing in different directions." Her indifference hurt more than anger would have. I was losing my wife, and she did not seem to care. The truth about Jessica's infidelity came to light purely by accident. One morning, while she was showering, her phone repeatedly chimed with incoming messages. Concerned it might be an emergency, I glanced at the screen and saw a message preview from someone named Michael that read, "Last night was amazing. Cannot wait to see you again tomorrow." My heart pounded as I picked up her phone. It was password protected, but after 3 years of marriage, I knew her code was her birth date. The messages I found confirmed my worst fears. Jessica had been having an affair with Michael Gordon, a 45-year-old real estate developer known for his extravagant lifestyle. Rather than confronting her immediately, I decided to gather more information. Over the next 2 weeks, I noted Jessica's unexplained absences and flimsy excuses. Working late on a special project meant dinner at an exclusive restaurant with Michael. Weekend photo shoot in Boston was actually a trip to Michael's beach house in the Hamptons. I finally hired a private investigator who documented multiple rendezvous at luxury hotels and intimate dinners. The affair had been going on for 6 months, starting shortly after our trip to Bali. Armed with undeniable evidence, I confronted Jessica one evening after she returned from what she claimed was a girls' night out. "How was your evening with Michael?" I asked calmly as she walked through the door. Jessica froze, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "You had me followed. How dare you invade my privacy? So you are not denying it." After several minutes of heated exchange, her defenses crumbled. "Fine. Yes, I have been seeing Michael. He understands me in ways you never could." "How exactly?" "By buying you things." Her eyes flashed with indignation. "He appreciates my worth. He knows how to live properly, how to move in the right circles. He would never question my spending or make me feel guilty for wanting nice things. And those material things are worth destroying our marriage." Jessica looked at me with cold determination. "Michael is worth 10 of you financially. He owns multiple properties across the country. He has a private jet. He can give me the life I deserve." Her words cut deeper than any knife could have. The woman I had loved so completely had reduced our relationship to a transaction, and I had been found wanting. In the weeks that followed, our home became a battleground. Jessica refused to end her relationship with Michael, but also would not leave our apartment. She began making subtle threats about what would happen if I pushed for divorce. Half of everything is mine. By law, she reminded me, during one particularly heated argument. The apartment investments, retirement funds, everything. I will make sure of it. She told her friends and family that I was controlling and emotionally abusive, painting herself as the victim. When we attended social events, she would make a show of being the perfect wife, while whispering cutting remarks when no one else could hear. "Everyone here thinks you are so successful," she said during a charity gala. "If only they knew you were too afraid to make real money." The constant tension began affecting every aspect of my life. My work performance suffered as I lost focus during important meetings. I stopped sleeping properly, often staying awake until dawn replaying conversations and wondering where things had gone so wrong. I lost weight as my appetite disappeared, and friends commented on my haggard appearance. "You look terrible," my colleague Patrick observed during lunch. What is going on? I could not bring myself to share the full extent of my marital problems, so I blamed it on work stress. The truth was too painful, too humiliating to admit out loud. After 3 months of living in this toxic environment, I knew something had to change. I consulted with a divorce attorney who laid out my options clearly. "New York is an equitable distribution state," she explained. "This means marital assets are divided fairly, though not necessarily equally. Given the circumstances, including evidence of infidelity, we have grounds to argue for a favorable distribution." And the apartment I asked, already knowing where Jessica would focus her demands. My attorney smiled knowingly. "We will address that when the time comes." When I finally served Jessica with divorce papers, her reaction was explosive. She threw a crystal vase against the wall, barely missing my head. "You will regret this," she threatened. "I will take you for everything you are worth." Within days, Jessica had retained Bradley Hoffman, a notorious divorce attorney, known for representing wealthy clients in high-profile cases. His reputation for aggressive tactics and astronomical fees preceded him. "Mr. Hoffman charges $2,000 per hour," I remarked when Jessica mentioned his name. "And he is worth every penny," she replied smugly. "He has never lost a case." Jessica's initial settlement demand was outrageous. She wanted the apartment 75% of our assets and substantial spousal support for 5 years. Her justification was that she had sacrificed her modeling career to be my wife, despite the fact that she had continued working throughout our marriage. Her attorney began a campaign of legal harassment, filing motion after motion and demanding extensive financial disclosures. The message was clear: make a generous settlement offer or prepare for a long, expensive legal battle. Through it all, I remained calm and followed my attorney's advice. Document everything, maintain professional communication, and prepare for the final showdown in court. The day of our property settlement hearing arrived with a tension that felt electric. I had spent weeks preparing with my attorney, reviewing financial documents, and practicing my testimony. We had developed a strategy that hinged on perfect timing and Jessica's predictable nature. I wore a simple navy suit to court, nothing flashy or expensive that might contradict my financial position. Jessica, by contrast, arrived in designer clothing, with a new handbag that probably cost more than what most people earn in a month. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined from television shows, with dark wood paneling and uncomfortable benches. Judge Eleanor Winters, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with silver hair and piercing eyes, presided over our case. Jessica sat confidently beside her attorney, occasionally glancing in my direction with a smirk. She had spent the previous week telling mutual friends that she would soon be the sole owner of our beautiful penthouse apartment. Today, we will address the division of assets in the divorce of Amos Carter and Jessica Carter. Judge Winters announced, reviewing the paperwork before her. "I understand there are significant disagreements regarding property distribution." Bradley Hoffman rose dramatically, buttoning his custom suit jacket. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Carter, is entitled to an equitable share of the marital assets, including their luxury Manhattan apartment, valued at approximately $3.5 million. I nearly choked at the inflated valuation but maintained my composure. "This property represents the marital home where my client has established her life," Hoffman continued. "Mrs. Carter has become accustomed to a certain standard of living that should be maintained post-divorce. He proceeded to give an elaborate description of the apartment, emphasizing its exclusive address, premium amenities, and status value. According to him, Jessica deserved to maintain possession because of her contributions to our social advancement as a couple. My attorney, Sofia Mendez, listened patiently, taking occasional notes, but otherwise showing little reaction to Hoffman's theatrical presentation. When Hoffman finally concluded, Judge Winters turned to us. "Miss Mendez, would your client like to respond to these claims?" "Actually, Your Honor," Sophia replied calmly, "my client would prefer to address the court directly on this particular matter." The judge nodded. "Mr. Carter, you may proceed." I stood slowly, straightened my tie, and took a deep breath. The moment I had been waiting for had arrived. "Thank you, Your Honor. There is an important factor about the apartment that has not been mentioned." I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Jessica leaned forward slightly, her expression still confident. "The apartment that has been discussed as a marital asset valued at $3.5 million is not owned by either of us," I continued. "It is a rental property for which I have maintained a lease for the past 7 years. The courtroom fell silent. Jessica's mouth literally dropped open, her eyes widening in shock. She gripped the table in front of her as though she might collapse. "Do you have documentation to support this claim?" Judge Winters asked. "Yes, Your Honor." I handed a folder to the court officer, who delivered it to the judge. "That contains my original lease agreement signed 7 years ago, along with all renewal documents and proof of monthly payments from my personal account. You will notice the lease is in my name only." Judge Winters reviewed the documents carefully, while Jessica whispered frantically to her attorney. The confidence that had radiated from her just moments ago had evaporated completely. Mr. Hoffman, the judge, addressed Jessica's lawyer, who was now shuffling through his papers with growing concern. "Were you aware of this information, Your Honor?" "This is the first we are hearing of this arrangement," he admitted, clearly flustered. "We were under the impression, based on the lifestyle of the couple, that the property was owned outright." "An assumption is not a fact, Counselor," Judge Winters replied dryly. "These documents appear to be in order." Jessica suddenly stood up. "He lied to me. For 5 years of marriage, he pretended to own that apartment. Mrs. Carter, please be seated," the judge ordered firmly. "Your Honor, if I may." I interjected once Jessica had reluctantly sat down. "I never once told my wife that I owned the apartment. She moved into my existing rental when we began living together, and the subject of ownership simply never came up. She assumed, and I did not correct her assumption, because it was never relevant to our relationship. At least it should not have been." Jessica's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "That is not true. He deliberately misled me, Mrs. Carter." Judge Winters warned, "One more outburst, and I will find you in contempt of court." Tears began streaming down Jessica's face as the reality of the situation sank in. The apartment she had been fighting for, the property she had boasted to friends, would soon be hers, did not even belong to us. Her entire strategy had collapsed in an instant. Judge Winters cleared her throat. "Given this new information, it is clear that the apartment cannot be considered a marital asset for distribution. Mr. Hoffman, Miss Mendez, I suggest you confer with your clients and revise your settlement proposals accordingly. We will reconvene after a 30-minute recess." As the judge left the courtroom, Jessica turned to me with a look of pure hatred. "You planned this all along," she hissed. "You humiliated me on purpose." I leaned closer and spoke quietly so only she could hear. "No, Jessica. You did that to yourself when you decided our marriage was a business transaction and I was not paying enough." The revelation about the apartment dramatically shifted the power dynamic in our divorce proceedings. Jessica's legal strategy had been built on acquiring what she believed was our most valuable asset. With that foundation crumbled, her position weakened considerably. During the recess, my attorney approached Jessica's legal team with evidence we had been holding, in reserve detailed documentation of her affair with Michael Gordon including time-stamped photos and hotel receipts, records of her excessive and unauthorized spending, and proof that she had hidden substantial debt from me throughout our marriage. Mrs. Carter incurred nearly $100,000 in credit card debt during the last year of marriage alone. Sophia explained to Bradley Hoffman, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Purchases that provided no benefit to the marriage and were made without Mr. Carter's knowledge or consent. The evidence painted a clear picture. Jessica had not only been unfaithful, but had also been financially irresponsible with our joint resources while planning her exit strategy. Given these circumstances, my attorney continued, we believe a revised settlement heavily favoring Mr. Carter would be appropriate and likely supported by the court. When we reconvened, Judge Winters reviewed the additional evidence and frowned deeply. It appears there are significant factors affecting equitable distribution that were not previously disclosed, she noted. I strongly suggest both parties consider mediation to avoid prolonging these proceedings. Jessica's confident demeanor had completely disappeared. She sat slumped in her chair, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Her attorney looked equally deflated, recognizing that their position had deteriorated beyond salvage. After consulting with her lawyer, Jessica agreed to mediation. The negotiations that followed were tense but productive. The final settlement was far more balanced than her initial demands. I would retain my personal savings and retirement accounts in full. Jessica would be responsible for all debt she had incurred in her name. Our joint accounts would be divided based on documented contributions. Jessica would receive minimal short-term spousal support rather than the substantial long-term payments she had demanded. Most importantly, Jessica formally relinquished any claim to the apartment that had never been ours to begin with. As the mediator finalized the paperwork, Jessica looked at me with a mixture of anger and bewilderment. I still do not understand, she said quietly. Why would you rent such an expensive place instead of buying it? You could have built equity all these years. Because I value freedom over ownership, I explained. I never wanted to be tied to a mortgage or property taxes or maintenance costs. Renting gave me flexibility and peace of mind. But everyone assumed we owned it. What was the point, if not for status? That was never the point for me, Jessica. I chose that apartment because I loved the space and the views, not because of what other people would think of me for living there. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, Jessica truly listened to me. A flicker of understanding crossed her face, quickly replaced by resignation. I guess I never really knew you, she said. I could say the same about you. We signed the final divorce papers 3 weeks later in our attorney's office. The process was civil and subdued, a stark contrast to the drama that had characterized our marriage's end. As we prepared to leave, Jessica hesitated by the door. For what it is worth, I am sorry. Things ended this way. Me too, I replied honestly. I hope you find what you are looking for. Michael and I broke up, she admitted. Once he realized I would not be getting the apartment or a big settlement, he lost interest rather quickly. I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions, vindication, pity, and a strange sense of closure. Take care of yourself, Jessica. You too, Amos. We parted ways on that unexpectedly peaceful note. Our 5-year relationship concluded with more dignity than I had anticipated. After finalizing the divorce, I decided it was time for a fresh start. The luxury apartment, once a home filled with hopes and dreams, now felt tainted by painful memories. When my lease came up for renewal 2 months later, I declined to extend it. Instead, I purchased a modest but charming 2-bedroom condominium overlooking the river. It was smaller than the penthouse, but truly mine, in a way the rental never was. I paid a substantial down payment to keep the mortgage manageable, and took great pleasure in designing the space to reflect my actual tastes, rather than an image I thought I should project. This place suits you better, my friend Daniel commented during a housewarming gathering. It feels authentic. That word authentic resonated deeply. For years I had been living partly in a world constructed to please Jessica, compromising my own values and preferences. Now I could be fully myself without apology. The first few months after the divorce were challenging despite the favorable settlement. I experienced a profound sense of failure and questioned my judgment. How had I not seen Jessica's true nature earlier? What had I done to contribute to the breakdown of our relationship? To process these feelings, I joined a support group for divorced men. Meeting weekly in a community center downtown, we shared experiences and offered each other perspective and encouragement. The stories I heard made me realize how universal certain relationship dynamics are, regardless of background or circumstances. "We all have blind spots when it comes to love," said Marcus, a professor who had been through a similar experience. "The important thing is learning from them." I also reconnected with old friends whom I had neglected during my marriage. Jessica had never enjoyed spending time with my college roommates or colleagues, dismissing them as boring or not our kind of people. Rebuilding these authentic connections reminded me of who I truly was. Travel became an unexpected source of healing. I took a month-long sabbatical from work and backpacked through Southeast Asia, something Jessica would have considered beneath her standards. Sleeping in modest guest houses, eating street food, and connecting with fellow travelers restored my sense of adventure and spontaneity. In Cambodia, sitting on ancient temple steps watching the sunrise, I experienced a moment of perfect clarity. Happiness was never going to come from impressing others. It came from living in alignment with my own values and connecting genuinely with people who shared them. Professionally, the divorce ultimately proved beneficial. Without the pressure to maintain an increasingly expensive lifestyle, I could focus on the aspects of my career that genuinely interested me rather than just pursuing the highest paycheck. I developed a specialization in sustainable investment strategies, which led to a promotion that was more fulfilling than prestigious. My financial habits, always relatively conservative, became even more intentional. I established a small investment fund dedicated to supporting startups with social impact missions, finding deep satisfaction in helping young entrepreneurs bring their visions to life. The most meaningful change came through my volunteer work. I began teaching financial literacy classes at a community center in a low-income neighborhood. Helping young adults understand budgeting, saving, and responsible credit use gave me purpose and perspective. "You explained this better than my college professor," one student told me after a session on investment basics. "You make it seem possible for regular people, not just rich folks." Gradually, I opened myself to the possibility of new relationships. I met interesting women through friends, work events, and even my volunteer activities. I dated casually at first, taking time to understand what I truly valued in a partner after my experience with Jessica. "You seem different from most guys I meet," said Nadia, a pediatric nurse I had been seeing for a few months. "There is no pretense with you." "I learned the hard way that pretense eventually collapses," I replied, "and usually takes everything else down with it." 2 years after my divorce was finalized, I unexpectedly ran into Jessica at a restaurant downtown. She looked elegant as always, but somehow more subdued. We exchanged awkward greetings before she asked if she could join me briefly. "I wanted to thank you," she said once seated, surprising me completely. "Thank me? For what?" "For teaching me a valuable lesson even though I did not appreciate it at the time." She smiled ruefully. "After our divorce, I had to completely reimagine my life. No more luxury apartment, no more keeping up with the Joneses." It was humbling, and exactly what I needed. She explained that she had moved to Chicago, scaled back her modeling work, and started a small business designing affordable jewelry. She was dating a teacher and living in a modest apartment that they both contributed to equally. "I am happier now than I ever was when I was chasing status," she admitted. "So, in a strange way, you did me a favor with that courtroom revelation." As we parted ways, I felt a sense of closure that no legal document could have provided. Both of us had found our own paths to authenticity, albeit through a painful process. Reflecting on my journey from that luxury apartment to where I stood now, I realized the most valuable things in life were never the ones with the highest price tag. True wealth came from self-knowledge, meaningful connections, and the courage to live according to your own values, rather than society's expectations. Today my life is simpler but infinitely richer in the ways that matter. I own less but appreciate more. I earn what I need rather than constantly chasing more. And most importantly, I surround myself with people who value me for who I am, not what I have or appear to have. If my experience has taught me anything, it is that authentic living may not always look impressive from the outside, but it creates a foundation for happiness that no luxury rental ever could. Have you ever had to make a choice between appearance and reality in your own life? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need this reminder that true wealth is measured in authenticity, not assets. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads you directly to what you truly need.